It's been the easiest question that the new phone is definitely better than the old one, but how much better and where can we actually spot the differences? Here we've got both the brand new S23 Ultra and the last gen S22 Ultra as well. We'll dig really deep into the camera setup by comparing not only all four of the lenses which both of them has, but also 200 megapixels compared to 108 in terms of detail and texture rendering. We'll be also comparing their portrait mode as well as super steady mode for ultra steady handheld video recording. 200 megapixels on a tiny smartphone camera sensor. Does it really matter, and is there any meaningful upgrade at all? We'll take a look in a bit. From daylight to midnight, the first thing that captured my eyeballs was actually how different the colors looked on the image produced by the S23 Ultra. Everything looks stunning and vivid on the S22 Ultra. Both color saturation and exposures been tuned down slightly. Maybe more than slightly. It's quite obvious that blue looks brighter and cooler on the S22 Ultra. Now put the color science aside, the high resolution sensor on the S23 Ultra is indeed bringing more detail when it's way cropped in. Honestly, if you share image simply on Instagram without cropping in more than you should, no one can spot the extra pixels. But the high resolution image actually makes reframing and cropping more practical. I have to admit, even I've been taking photos for phone reviews for like ages, it can be still challenging to get the best framing every time on the street. Now cropping and reframing can be useful. Samsung's definitely made some improvements on noise reduction and texture reproduction. We'll come back to this war of high resolution in just a moment. It's worth noticing that technically not much has changed if we exclude the 200 megapixels main camera. All other three cameras, the 12 megapixels ultra-wide, 10 megapixels 3x telelens, and 10x super long-range zoom share the same hardware, at least on the paper, as last year's model. Now from 3x to 10x, I'm thrilled by how similar the image quality that these two phones deliver. If we ignore the slight change in color science, they are almost identical. The magic actually happens from 30x to 100x zoom. I bet it's new ISP doing all the job, giving sharper and more usable photos. Is it a day and night difference? Maybe not, but it is still a medium to big step forward. Okay, we're back to the 200 megapixels game. This was actually the original plan that we take these phones to the beach, but the mile-thick clouds just literally blocked us from taking warm and bright photos. Instead, it was a pretty great chance for us to push them to their limit, so that we can reveal how good or maybe even bad, who knows, if the light isn't under our control. When there's adequate sunlight but not plenty of it, this time it's hard to judge which phone takes the crown. But again, I'm thrilled by how different the AI and the sensor perceive noise and details. It's not hard to observe the S23 Ultra handles the noise more intelligently. Now, portrait mode is another processing and algorithm-reliant aspect. With enough light source, skin tones, and micro-contrast on my face are more than just upgrade or update, but different. It's now warmer and it's got more depth to it. The entire image is more true to life. It may be different depending on the skin color, just to point out if it really makes a difference. Alright, aside from the extreme texture and detail output, lowlight, which Samsung calls nightography, is something we must compare. While for the ultra-wide and standard-wide, I found it pointless to pick any differences. But again, the 3x telelens on the S23 Ultra actually stunned me. It uses shorter shutter speed while capturing the same or even higher level of detail in low-light scenes. In this case, both phones are turning the almost dark sky into this miserable grey-colored fog. To achieve a spectacular performance in brightening up the night sky, the ferry on the S22 Ultra is blurry and is obviously in motion due to the longer exposure time. On the S23 Ultra, however, all three ferries sit still in the middle of the harbour. With the same hardware again, the S23 Ultra is still somehow capable of generating slightly more detail than the S22 Ultra, while actually using a shorter shutter speed. This is what I call the power of computational photography. Only the hardware won't give you the best photo. Now we'll be checking out their nightography with this colossal city landscape right before looking into a few portrait photos of myself with the city lights behind me. In general, low-light portraits looks more vivid and saturated on the S23 Ultra with a warmer and more true-to-life skin tones, which we've just gone through. My face looks sort of more 3D on the S23 Ultra compared to the relatively flat rendering of my face on the S22 Ultra. There is a bit more noise on the S22 Ultra's image as well. Super Steady video recording mode is another upgrade. It literally upgraded from 1080p to 1440p Quad HD. Well, even if resolution and megapixels count doesn't apply to you. Now, Jello effect and video stabilization is 1 year better. Eventually, the sky is dark enough to push them to the limit and make night mode count. Now it takes the S23 Ultra 1 second to gather enough light for this image, while it takes 2 on the S22 Ultra. Maybe you'd say it's not a huge difference, but it does make low-light photography more effortless. Like standing still for 2 seconds compared to 1. Alright, I know it's not a huge big deal for some people, but the sharper colors and even more true-to-life texture are real. Now, the jaw-dropping surprise actually happens here on the 3x and 10x telelens. It's fascinating to just think of the software and AI can actually shorten the exposure time of the new phone by half, while having the same piece of hardware at least on the paper again. With all that, the final image looks even sharper in both colors and detail, as well as texture. Oh, not to mention, there's less noise on the shadows and the background. If you ask and want to pick the better city lights photo, I bet most will pick the one on the left. The color's just more attractive and the texture is more legit. For extreme detail and texture, improved skin tones, upgraded super long-range zoom, and vivid lithography. The level of detail and low-light capability that the S23 Ultra puts on the table is quite mesmerizing. Now thanks for watching and don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you all next time.